I renovated the apartment I was renting, and as a thank you, they decided to evict me. I became a tenant for the first time in my life in my 30 seconds, pretty late. Before that, I had always been on the other side of the situation. I myself was a landlord and a builder. I understand that this may not make readers feel sympathy for me, but in my defense I will say, everything I own, I built with my own hands. At least in the early years during university, I worked part-time as a painter, finisher, carpenter, and cabinet maker. When I graduated, I had saved enough to throw myself into monstrous debt at crazy interest rates, which I later had to climb my way out of. I bought a dangerous abandoned warehouse, and that became my first home afterward. Eventually, I rebuilt that warehouse into a 4-unit residential building. I lived there for the next 10 years, while also starting to build new rental properties from scratch. Right before COVID, I sold that very first building, and the buyer wanted me to move out so he could raise the rent to market price. This was my first eviction, but the inconvenience was softened by the decent profit I received from the sale during the insane market boom. Besides, I thought that living in a building you yourself built and owned for years might be awkward anyway. So I decided to treat myself and rent a condo in the city center. A huge step up compared to the previous one-bedroom place I chose only for profitability, not for comfort. I spent about 3 months viewing dozens of options and ended up understanding the rental market quite well. Pride didn't allow me to take just anything. I needed to make the best deal possible. I quickly realized that the market, which once favored me as a landlord, turned out to be real hell for me as a tenant. I got incredibly lucky. I took a risk and went to see a condo I found on Craigslist without a single photo in the listing, which is usually always a bad sign. It turned out the lack of photos wasn't an attempt to hide something, but simply because the owner didn't know how to use a digital camera. He didn't even have a smartphone. And the apartment turned out to be perfect. The building was constructed around 2005, floor-to-ceiling panoramic windows, a high floor with an incredible view, air conditioning, open layout, reasonable price. The only problem was the terribly worn-out kitchen and bathroom, straight out of the early 2000s. And the reddest cherry hardwood floors you can imagine. Cheap honey-colored faux veneer cabinets, glossy black appliances, matte aluminum everywhere, frosted glass light fixtures. Visually offensive. The landlord seemed like someone who wouldn't interfere. In my rental offer, I included the proposal that if he agreed, I would take care of all maintenance myself, simply transferring him rent every month without bothering him. He liked that idea a lot. He said he had bought a house in the suburbs and wanted to keep this condo as a rental asset for 10 years until retirement. In the city where I live, tenant rights are quite strong, and unless he decided to sell the unit, he couldn't evict me for no reason. We signed the lease. I paid the deposit and moved in. The last time I saw him was during move-in inspection, after which he said, "If you treat the place with care, I promise you can live here as long as you want." A firm boomer handshake like at a job interview, and he was gone. We loved the new place, the complete opposite of the promising investment neighborhood we had just left. But the awful kitchen, bathrooms, and floors haunted me. However, I had a plan. It was only a matter of time. One of my subcontractors, a woodworking guy, specialized in retail interior finishes. He also made model showroom units for large developers. When you build a 30-story building, you often spend hundreds of thousands or even millions to create a model unit in the sales center. After the apartments sell out, the model unit is either thrown away or sold on Craigslist. When I used to build small multi-unit buildings, I would buy new but unused appliances, cabinets, flooring, and so on, directly out of some marketing guy's garage for cash. A couple months later, summer 2020, COVID was in full swing. My subcontractor texts me, "One of my clients is canceling a project, and since they're freezing payment, I'm dismantling their showroom apartment." According to the drawings, the dimensions matched my kitchen almost perfectly. And the specification was insane. About 6.1 meters of Snyder glossy white kitchen cabinets, hardware in champagne bronze, a full Sub-Zero Plus Wolf appliance set, white marble countertops and backsplash, Callista faucets. Retail price easily over $100,000 not including installation. And also about 111 square meters of light oak chevron parquet flooring if I agreed to remove it myself. How much did he want for everything? $10,000 in cash. But my construction site was shut down indefinitely due to lockdown. The government was covering 75% of my payroll. And all I had to do all day was stare at my ugly kitchen. After about 3 hours with a tape measure and a pencil, I asked my subcontractor if he'd help me install it for $40, hour cash plus a couple kegs of beer. He agreed. The last step was to write to the landlord and ask if he would mind a full renovation of his condo. The key line I included was, "I agree to return everything to the exact condition it was in at move-in, when I eventually move out." As expected, he replied, "No problem. Do whatever you want. We're happy to have you as a tenant." Time to get to work. I took apart the old kitchen in 2 days, working quietly. I did everything without permits, no inspections were happening during lockdown anyway. But working slowly had one benefit. I removed everything carefully, without damage, labeling and wrapping every piece. Dismantling the old kitchen actually brought me joy. The old flooring I removed in a morning, also labeled, wrapped and stacked in order. The subcontractor came and installed the new kitchen in 2 days while I laid down the flooring. I spent a week just on the floor. I had to drive the boards to my warehouse across town to cut them there, because using a power saw during lockdown when everyone is home was out of the question. In less than 2 weeks, I had essentially a brand new luxury condo for $12,000 out of pocket. At this point, I'm sure readers are clutching their heads asking, what kind of idiot proudly renovates someone else's apartment at his own expense? But at the time, it made perfect sense. I was sure I'd live there at least 10 years. Plus, when I moved in, I was paying about $500 a month below market. Now, after the renovation, I was paying $1,000 below market. Sometimes the real estate market works in ways where renting is cheaper than owning. For example, my monthly rent wouldn't even cover the interest on a mortgage loan for that condo, not to mention utilities, insurance, taxes, and lost investment value of tying up my down payment. In other words, renting the condo was cheaper than renting the money from the bank to buy it. And for a builder, cash is a tool. The more you have, the more you can build. With a 1-year lease and plenty of free time, it didn't feel like a crazy decision. And seriously, who would say no to a $2,000 faucet? Pouring a glass of water from it felt like pulling the bolt on a perfectly oiled Holland & Holland shotgun. In the worst case, I could always sell the appliances and recoup most of the cost if something went wrong, which is exactly what happened. I had overlooked one detail. The landlord's wife. By spring 2023, by my calculations, the investment had already paid for itself almost 36 months of use. Since the day I moved in, I hadn't seen the landlord once. He never contacted me again after approving the renovation. Other than the monthly "got your payment" confirmation text, he was basically a ghost. So naturally, I started to worry when by the end of the first week of May, he still hadn't deposited my rent payment. 2 of my emails went unanswered. Then a knock on the door. I opened it and was hit by a wave of strong floral perfume, perfectly matching a swirling wall of patterned fabric and red heels in the doorway. Turns out the landlord had caught COVID. In 2023, for God's sake. So he sent his wife to collect the payment. I grabbed my phone to cancel the online transfer and went to my office for my checkbook. When I returned, she was still there. Still in the middle of my living room. Spinning slowly like a damn music box ballerina, looking around with wide eyes. "Oh my God, it's so beautiful in here. I heard you renovated, but I didn't think it was like this." She opens the refrigerator. My Sub-Zero refrigerator. "I just love these floors. And are these cabinets custom?" She turns the water faucet on. Then off. Then on. Then off again. Probably 6 times. After she left, it took days to air out the perfume smell. A few hours later, my wife came home. And judging by the look she gave the living room as she walked in, I realized she had already imagined the entire conversation between that woman and her husband with dollar signs floating above everything. Sure enough, 3 weeks later, I get a call from a realtor. He wants to schedule a photographer to take pictures for a listing. The landlord is selling the condo. The landlord himself, now recovered, stopped responding to texts, emails, everything. I was furious that he didn't even have the decency to talk to me directly. My wife was furious because she didn't want to move. And I was just ashamed that I trusted this guy. We didn't lose much, objectively. Over 3 years, we had paid tens of thousands less than market rent. But still, it sucked. The condo sold in 3 weeks, even in a slow market. And yes, the new owners wanted to live in it themselves. They sent the legally required 3-month notice and paid 1 month's rent as relocation compensation. Then we saw the listing description. Luxuriously renovated with premium appliances, cabinetry, and high-end finishes, no expense was spared. My first thought was to at least contact the realtor and clarify what exactly is included in the sale. But my wife saw the listing and got so angry that we decided, let them find out on their own. You probably already see where this is going. This time, It only took me 3 days to fully dismantle the new kitchen and put the old one back. Same for the flooring. Turns out, if everything is pre-labeled and pre-measured, you can install about 1,000 square feet of flooring in roughly 2 hours. I did have to glue the old flooring down very thoroughly because the tongue and groove joints had loosened a bit and I wanted to make sure it wouldn't squeak or warp. That cheap flooring was so fragile that if anyone ever tries to remove it again, it will simply shatter and fall apart at the seams. The old Glacier Bay kitchen faucet from Home Depot, the $49 one, unfortunately leaked after installation. So I gave the new owners a gift. I replaced it with the exact same Glacier Bay faucet. But now it costs $60. The new one also leaked. Not much. Only when turned on. I re-watched the move-in inspection video to refresh my memory and ensure that everything looked exactly as it had when I arrived. Down to the same tiny drywall holes in the exact same places. I also remembered that the original oven had a burned-out control board and shut itself off every 10 minutes. We even talked about leaving a hidden camera on the wall to record the reactions of the new owners when they saw that we had perfectly honored the terms of the lease. But we moved out about a week before they were scheduled to move in, and frankly, the odds that we could get sued were non-zero. So we didn't risk it. The intent alone was satisfying. What happened next, I don't know. Dozens of calls from the landlord and the new buyers, all ignored. I sent them a certified letter with a copy of the lease, the move-in inspection video on DVD, and the full email chain from 2020 where the landlord approved the renovation under the condition that I return everything to original condition when I moved out. A few days later, I received a message from the realtor. Is less than #0. 5# is greater than. You are petty and vindictive. Consider yourself lucky they didn't sue. Which, reading between the lines, means they tried. And a lawyer told them they had no case. The concierge recently told me that no one has moved into the unit yet. And that opens up one beautiful possibility. By law, if a tenant is evicted so the owners can live there personally, but no one moves in within 6 months, then the previous tenant is owed compensation. Up to 1 full year of rent. I still haven't purchased a place. We had to overpay to move 1 floor up in the same building, different layout, better finishes. But I set a notification on the building's sales listings. If a damaged or underpriced unit ever goes up for sale in this building, I will make an offer immediately. After all, I already have a kitchen that will fit perfectly. Story 2. The neighbor's girlfriend tried to get me evicted. This story is old, but still incredibly funny. About 7 years ago, I moved into a 4-bedroom house with 3 of my friends. I was the only woman among 3 guys. One of them was the son of the landlord, and we had all known each other since college. Honestly, these were some of the best years of shared living in my life. We all had very different work schedules. Since I started work the earliest, at 6 a.m., I took the only bedroom on the first floor. My friend, let's call him Jay, worked overnight shifts and came home around 4:30 a.m., and he lived directly above me. So we never bothered each other coming and going. On weekdays, Jay and I would often have breakfast together, me before work, him before going to sleep. We kept a shared jar in the kitchen where we all put $5, $10 for common groceries: milk, eggs, bread, sometimes beer, sometimes dinner for everyone. The rule was simple. If you finish something, you take money from the jar and replace it the same day. When we ordered pizza or when I cooked for everyone, we also used that fund. This part is important later. After about 5 months, Jay started dating a girl named Karen. He brought her to one of our game nights to introduce her to the group and see if she'd vibe with everyone. Everything was fine until Karen realized something. She had assumed I was the girlfriend of one of the other guys. So, when she learned that I lived there, had my own room, and wasn't dating any of them, she suddenly became different. She tried to hide it, but it was very obvious. From that day on, she would show up right after I got home from work and stay until Jay left for his shift. If I walked into the living room, she'd ask why I was interrupting their time. If I went to the kitchen, she'd make comments about me being disrespectful. If Jay and I simply talked, she would suddenly start dramatically making out with him in front of me. She even complained that the sound of my washing machine ruined their romantic atmosphere. Yes, the washing machine. Jay knew she was being ridiculous, so he asked her to just hang out with him in his room instead. Unfortunately, she responded by making the loudest, most theatrical fake bedroom noises imaginable. They sounded like a parody of intimacy. The rest of us just laughed. It was impossible not to. One night, Karen got really drunk before Jay's shift, so we insisted she sleep it off in his room. I brought her food and ibuprofen because I knew she'd feel terrible in the morning. The next morning, Jay came home and made breakfast for the two of us, like always. Karen came downstairs and immediately started screaming. She woke up the entire house. She accused Jay of cheating. She accused me of sleeping with every guy in the house. And then she screamed that I needed to pay Jay back for all the food he wasted on me. Our landlord's son, let's call him Cam, silently reached into the jar, pulled out a $5 bill, and slapped it into Jay's hand. Jay and Cam and I all stared at Karen in silence. She stormed out. After she left, Cam and I sat Jay down and said, "If Karen cannot handle the fact that I live here, then Karen cannot live here." Jay asked for 1 week to talk to her and clear things up. We agreed. Then things got weird. The money jar began to empty mysteriously. Clean dishes of mine appeared, still clean, in the sink, as if someone staged them. Small items went missing from communal spaces and then somehow showed up in my room. Karen was acting sugary sweet to everyone. But Cam and I knew exactly what she was doing. Is less than #0. 5 is greater than. She was trying to make it look like I was stealing and causing drama. So we decided to let her keep digging her own hole. Then Cam gets a call from his mom, the actual landlord. Someone sent her a long message claiming I was destroying the house and stealing. Pictures included. Karen tried to report me to the landlord. Fortunately, Cam's mom trusted him and told him to keep an eye on me and support me if needed. So now we knew Karen wasn't just insecure, she was scheming. Time for a tiny, elegant revenge. First, I eliminated the shared jar. I divided the remaining money equally and announced, "Someone is stealing from the jar, so we're done using it." Karen was furious, which confirmed everything. Then Cam and I started hanging out in the living room every day. If Karen entered the kitchen, one of us would ask, "What are you doing in our fridge?" Karen stopped going to the kitchen entirely. Then, the final act. We knew Jay had an extra overnight shift coming up, and Karen planned to stay the night. Cam and I sat in his room next to Jay's and staged the sound of a romantic encounter. In reality, we were just pushing the bed frame against the wall and trying not to laugh. Karen was listening through the door, exactly as we expected. When Jay FaceTimed, Cam and I were sitting there quietly playing Mario Party. Karen realized she had nothing. The next day, Jay gathered the house without Karen. We explained everything. The staged noises. Her stealing. The message to the landlord. Jay asked our third roommate, "Did you hear anything suspicious last night?" Without hesitation, he said, "Yeah, I heard them yelling insults at each other over Mario Party. They weren't hooking up." Karen's story collapsed instantly. The next day, Jay broke up with her. He called her a liar, a thief, and someone who tried to destroy his friendships. A few months later, Jay met someone wonderful, kind, stable, respectful. They eventually got married. I was one of the bridesmaids. And Karen was a waitress at the wedding venue. She saw all of us together, laughing, happy, still friends. And we absolutely told the story of the bed-shaking revenge at the reception. Sometimes life gives us people who don't value our trust. And sometimes it takes losing something to finally understand what we truly deserve. Your peace is worth more than any apartment or any relationship. Choose people who choose you back. Thank you for watching today's stories. Let me know in the comments, what would you have done in their place? I read every message. Take care of yourselves. Rest when you're tired. Eat when you're hungry. And never apologize for protecting your peace. You're watching StoryBoar, where real emotions tell real stories.